Everyone, it's Kamal here.
Hi guys, this is Anil here, and thank you for joining us in this month's webinar. So Kamal, let's straight ask this question: why are we talking about procurement heads being the new power centers?
As you know, this is entirely based on the study we did. We studied about 100 plus procurement heads, and whatever data came from that, today the entire discussion is about what came from that, honestly.
Right.
And what we looked at is two aspects. One is the procurement professionals wanting to reach the C-suite of procurement. That means they want to become the CPOs. Another aspect we saw is how the procurement heads themselves wanted to be in the C-suite of the organization, which means the real power center of the organization.
Right.
So what we took as a title is primarily coming from what we heard from various procurement heads we spoke to, and the research that we did mapping out these 100 plus CPOs.
Right.
So there we go.
So let's look at the facts when it comes to the Indian context, Kamal. I mean, we're talking about the procurement world. So we estimate that there are about 440,000 people, and many of them, before they got to the CPO job, they had to spend about 20 years of work experience. So unlike other roles, Kamal, I mean, this role you get the chief role after spending considerable time. Would you say that?
No, I won't say that. I would actually say that if you look at the fresher entry to this space is sort of coming via after a certain experience, whereas in other professions, possibly like HR or finance, possibly you have an entry level role. Whereas here we are seeing that after a certain experience is when the freshers are entering into this space. And also another angle to this, Anil, is that if you look at the total number of job openings which are there, it is also a role which is not talked about much.
Yeah.
From a job opportunity per se, we talk a whole lot of tech roles, we talk about HR roles, finance roles, but if you look at the numbers, they're staggering. 440,000, 440,000 professionals working, and at any given time having 17,000 job openings. We don't talk about that much. So from that point of view, I think these numbers are really encouraging, and I think the noise that we are making possibly is deserved for
so
this
even
space.
For a fresher who wants to seek a career in this area, I mean, there are enough jobs, 17,000 vacancies.
Seems like at least you can't argue with the data that we have.
Right.
So from an opportunity perspective, very clearly the procurement profession is up there.
Right.
So that's the reason I think we need to dwell a little deeper into it.
Right.
I think what's interesting, Anil, also is to look at where this talent pool is. What have they studied? This 100 plus, procurement heads that we studied, where they came from.
Right.
Did you know about any institute, Anil, before this, which actually we talked about when it came to procurement as a profession?
Yeah, just the IIMM, Kamal, Indian Institute of Material Management. That's the only institution I came across that specializes, in careers in procurement. Other than that, I couldn't. I mean, typically it's an engineer and an MBA. That's the typical sort of background that you get into this profession from.
Now it's an iron, isn't it? We talk about tests, XLRI in HR, we talk about IMA, IMC,
Yeah.
So all these spaces, whether it's the marketing, sales functions, finance functions, where they came from, HR institutes, but there isn't anything equivalent of that in procurement, and I'm hoping that one day something like that will emerge.
Yeah, and for a function, Kamal, that handles 80% or 75 to 80% of the company's buying, effort. I thought 80% of sales of a company is rooted through the buying team's effort. I thought it's quite sort of undervalued in that sense.
Fair enough. I think what's also important is to look at dip a little deeper into the study that we did.
Yeah.
And where did these guys come from? If you look at the graphs out there, we're talking about the current CPOs, what roles that they are doing today, whether they are the directors or the heads or VPs or SVPs as applicable. They all seem to be vertically coming from their own, function. That means they were procurement before. Most of them were managers or senior managers. So it seems like the path to the top is coming from within the function. There isn't anything cross-functional movements at all.
Yeah.
Very clearly, I think that's what is coming from the study, that nobody who was, let's say, a CFO or anybody else coming from another function has not moved into procurement, clearly demonstrating that it is a very specialized role, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it requires a lot of expertise, but of course there are tools today for you to really depend on for you to help your function. But it's heartening to note, Kamal, they're not just happy just sticking to their vertical. Many of them are even aspiring to become CEOs and MDs and COOs.
Yeah, that's the interesting one. If you look at the third box out there, we're talking about the aspiration roles that people who are in the CPO roles that I talked about.
Yeah.
Some of them have indicated that they want to be in global roles, but a significant number also said, I want to be in the board of the company, I want to be an MD, I want to be a COO. So very clearly, we are talking about people who are aspiring beyond the procurement role.
Right.
But before we embarked upon this study, Anil, did you know about any procurement poster boys, if you may want to call that?
I would like to call them role models, Kamal.
Okay.
So I just knew about Tim Cook actually.
Okay.
Others were more discovery as we were diving deep into the subject. So we have several other stalwarts in this space. Many Barais, GM, then Jerry Smith, and P&G ex-CEO.
Yeah, I think if I'm in procurement, I'll definitely look up to it.
Yeah.
Of course, we do not have any Indian example that we could find. I'm sure there must be somewhere.
Yeah.
But honestly, we didn't find anybody who in India where the so-called role models that were procurement professionals went on to don the C role. Right.
Yeah.
So clearly, one of the things that we wanted to focus on is what does the role drive? What does the function drive? In terms of very well-known things like efficiency, de-risking from the suppliers, context, sustainability, and continuity of the things that they procure. And most importantly, we all know quality. But what we are not hearing here, Anil, is the fact that we all thought procurement is a function of saving costs. Why isn't that here is what I'm trying to wonder, especially in our study with the procurement heads, it didn't come in the velocity procurement study as well.
Right. So I think many of them thought of it as a given. So they never specified. I believe 9% of cost saving is the need or the ask of procurement teams year on year cost saving. So that I think everybody is clued into, but they were commenting mostly on the other factors.
Okay. No, I think that's like a given. 9% to do a year on year is a given, and very clearly what to expect on the job. What are the KPIs is a very interesting facet. We all know this, that they have to deliver and influence the capital spend and assess the risk.
Yeah.
Most importantly, we heard about the sustainability of the supply chain. But what was a surprise to me, Anil, was outdated technology.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not true in the services space, because we work with a lot of IT services companies which procure them as a service, where the spend is high and they themselves being a technology company, why people still believe that technology is still outdated.
Right.
It beats me.
Yeah. So one of the other factors, of course, is that lack of internal compliance was a surprising factor as a challenge that procurement team members face. That they commented on it. That normally we would face this as a big challenge. About 20-30% of the people mentioned this as being one of the challenges.
And I think one of the things I wanted to highlight, Anil, in this process is what is the best way to evaluate yourself if you are somebody who's very ambitious, because our entire study was focused around the pathway to what it takes to be in that C rule of procurement, or if you want to really grow into this profession.
Right.
And what is interesting is to ask one, how many boxes do you tick?
Right. This is the universe of a procurement professionals or the C-level persons, ambit today. Right. So it covers right from managing the process to evaluating the suppliers and improving them. Right. So those are the aspects. One is right from process management to tracking performance. So it covers the entire aspect. So if you expect to be a C-level professional, you should be ticking all these boxes. A lot of these boxes.
If you want to take a path of procurement and you want to really grow in that, this is what we say that you have to be strong at and evaluate yourself and ask your bosses for feedback if you are in that mode of wanting to grow within the procurement vertical.
It is in this space that there's a big difference between services procurement versus a person who does for manufacturing or other kind of businesses. While the cost plays an important role from a service procurement standpoint, which shouldn't be the case. We have had experience of working with procurement people who just sit down with their Excel sheets and say that, if you can bring down your price to this, you have your deal. I mean, that's those dreaded conversations that we have sometimes. Yeah. But I'm sure
they're just doing their job. We know that, and very clearly, I think these are what we would call as the hard skills required in procurement.
Yeah.
But absolutely. What about people who want to ask? This is, let's say, the C-suite of procurement. But if you really want to be the C-suite of the organization, you want to be on par with the CFO, COO, or let's say a CPO, the Chief People Officer, if I had to use that.
Right.
What is that you need to do?
Yeah, bringing back these role models that we spoke about earlier, we looked at the diverse roles that they handle. I mean, surely they didn't become CEOs just by handling one function. So we looked at the kind of roles that they handled prior to becoming CEOs, and there's a good example like maybe I was even head of HR for a certain region, and that's commendable because the kind of exposure that she had right from production to purchase to HR and a few other roles. We have not listed everything. But that's a fine example of what it takes to become, the CEO, having multifaceted experience.
But do you think IT services for kind of a setup, it's easier for CPOs or the procurement heads to move this? Because we understand that Apple kind of company, General Motors kind of a company, Office Depot, P&G are all highly procurement driven because they are in that consumer business, aren't they? So where the input that is coming in, how efficiently they are managed, decides the fate of the company.
Yeah.
So in a way, can we also say that these examples may not be apple to apple when you compare them with IT services procurement heads?
I think people who come from the manufacturing world may have a better chance because they get exposure to so many things. Unlike an IT, pure services game, whether you're working with a consulting company or a pure IT service company, a procurement person from that company may find it much tougher to move to the CEO or COO level as compared to a manufacturing setup. Yeah. Or for that matter, a retail organization.
Fair enough. I think also another dimension that we found in our study, Anil, is that the average tenure of a procurement head seems to be reasonably long.
Yeah.
People spend, if you look at the 20 years average experience people had in our study, we saw that people had meaningful tenures. Nobody left a job, at least the average tenure was about 4 years.
Yeah.
So I think that's a reasonable time in my view. And some of them have had longer tenures as they moved up the ladder.
Yeah.
Which also means you have enough time to do cross-functional roles.
Yeah.
And that is where I think some of the examples like, Ameri Bara sort of stands out, and so does Alan Lafley's example, because they did other horizontal roles before they went on to be the C role. So I guess the tenure people have in procurement is a blessing. Can they use that to possibly do some of the cross-functional roles? We know that for a C-suite roles, we are talking here about the organization C-suite, where the procurement strengths like negotiation, flair for numbers, finance and legal compliance skills are given. But I think what sort of gets missed out, and we saw, is that they're not taking the other parallel roles which are available in the organization. If the CPOs today are able to take some roles in customer management, services, marketing, if at all it's possible, technology, definitely, I think they can at least be in technology projects which enable them to get a better familiarity. I somewhere feel these last three bars we have put out there are very important aspects which we didn't see the procurement people whom we surveyed actually taking a part in that. We don't know what the barriers are, honestly, but we had a limited sample size, but we saw that the first three were their strengths and they could do better in that. But I think the last three parts, which is the customer management, operations and technologies, where they couldn't get a lateral exposure.
Right. So just to sum up, Kamal, I think they're in a good vantage point. Most future procurement professionals, at least the C-level people, have a good view of the company's pipeline of products. They have good capabilities of the internal capabilities, as well as the supplier capabilities and the network, and the strategic understanding of the company's direction to be able to play a major role in the coming time. So, I see the future as extremely bright for, procurement professionals.
Yeah, I think with that we possibly take some questions which have come. I'm also trying to see if there are any online questions which are coming up. Clearly, would you suggest a procurement as a career option for a fresher, Anil?
Yeah, certainly. Looking at the, undermined, positioning that this role has had so far, I certainly think it's a road less traveled And I think people should. I mean, I would certainly encourage a fresher to go for a career in this line.
The second question says, I am currently a purchasing manager. How long would it take to become a CPO?
This is not just a question for this role, but for any management growth. Hard to define that, but do certain things right, have those boxes ticked, and certainly, you have your path towards achieving that.
At least the 100 procurement heads we studied had a meaningful tenure. That means they spent meaningful time in each organization.
Yeah.
Some of them had growth early. Some of them got growth when they moved to another organization. So there isn't a pattern, but I think give and take, depending on the organization maturity we're talking about. At this point of time, these 100 CPOs we studied, it showed about a 15 to 20 years kind of tenure.
Yeah.
And Anil, for you, how practical it is for a CPO to become a CEO or a CEO?
Absolutely. I think we covered on some of the points of what they need to do and on the multifaceted approach they need to take. If they did all of that, certainly, the road looks good.
Yeah, I think come back to the original question of the power center. Very clearly, they are already a power center in terms of the impact of the organization. Some of them may not have the visibility in the organization context like Tim Cook or a Mary Barra had. But definitely, I would say that they are the role models if I am in procurement to see that let me pick up some cross-functional roles and stake my claim to be a C-suite within the organization. With that, thank you all for listening to us. One question which came as we are talking is, are there any opportunities in captives, GICs for procurement professionals?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the number of such opportunities is only increasing by the day, and be it a global 500 company or the next, Fortune 1000 companies, every single of these companies have future opportunities in procurement roles. So they're dealing with global procurement programs.
Yeah, putting some number sense to that, Anil, is if you look at about 1,300 GICs which are there in India, and which are employing close to about 1 million plus IT workers, and every company, because services is their strength, are adding procurement teams to manage this, and their strength is they've come to India for talent, and IT services procurement is something which is growing through these 1,300 GICs. So are the Indian IT services companies which have separate procurement teams. And also not to forget, there are about close to 30 new GICs coming every year to India. Right. So there you go straight away. If you multiply 35 into 4, you have about 100 new opportunities with new GICs coming in.
Right.
So all in all, within GICs, we are, there are also procurement shared services units in India. At least a couple of companies I'm aware of, one in Pune, in Chennai, where they have 500 procurement professionals as a back office to their global operations.
Absolutely.
So in a way, GICs, clearly we are seeing opportunities which are there with 1,000 plus GICs who are already there, and the 30 plus who are coming to India every year.
Right.
So with that, thank you all for tuning in, and I look forward to talk to you again in the next webinar.
Thanks, guys.